Welcome to episode 5 and creating the impossible game. So this episode we're going to focus on getting some more movement fixes in, as well as building our checkpoint system so we can drop flags along the way. When I say fixing the movement system, we just seem to have like that right there. Some movement where the rotation, because we're using physics-based rotation in it, isn't exactly working how we want it to. We don't have consistent ability to jump and move throughout our levels. So we're going to go ahead and fix that right away. So over here under our rigid body 2D on our player square, if we go down and open up constraints, we're going to freeze the rotation. So you'll notice we'll still be rotating now. When we jump, we will still rotate, but we're no longer relying on physics for our rotation, which we weren't before for this rotation. This was happening through some scripting without using physics, but now we won't kind of fall to the ground or anything, but our movement is much more stable. So we just needed to get it to where we snap to the ground when we land. So if we go over to our Visual Studio here, we need to add a kind of cancel our rotation as we land. So on our collision enter 2D, we could say transform.rotation is equal to quaternion.identity and see what that does. And this won't fix it completely. We're going to have an additional issue here with some jitteriness. So as we jump, you can see we're kind of flopping around here and it doesn't look right. So what's happening is as we land, our cube tries to snap down and land, but what happens is it ends up in the air slightly. So our other code triggers telling it to rotate, which then causes it to get stuck in a place where it's colliding, then it's not colliding, and it's rotating. So we just need to add a delay before it can start rotating after it lands. So we can go back into Visual Studio. We need to add a Boolean up here. So bool can rotate and say that's true because we want it to be able to rotate right away. And then we can say, hey, when we land on collision enter, we can set can rotate to false, but we need to be able to actually stop our rotation. So if in air, if can rotate, then we want to do a rotation here. So set that to false. We're no longer rotating when we're in the air, but we need to reset this. So to do that, we can do a coroutine. So let's say enumerator reset can rotate, and we'll say yield return new wait 4 seconds, and we'll do something small like 0.1. And then we just have to start that coroutine. So start coroutine. Reset can rotate. And now that should take care of it. Now, when we jump, we don't rotate at all. So I did something wrong. Hold on. Let's have a look here. All right, so we are resetting can rotate. Oh, we never set can rotate back to true. So after we wait for 0.1 seconds, we need to say, hey, can rotate is equal to true. All right, now if we go back in and try that again. We'll see when we jump, we rotate, and we snap to the ground, which takes away the issue of we're just kind of flopping around and stuff. And we can jump and have control jumps up like the staircase area over here, if I can make it there. But yeah, this fixes the movement. So now we're going to move on to creating the checkpointing system. First thing we're going to want to do for this is get it to where we can drop one of these flags into here. So that means we need to create a prefab first. So we'll just add this here, and we can just create a prefab out of that because it's going to be a game object that we attach things to. So we can't just drop an image in. So we'll drag our flag into our prefabs folder here. Delete it out of the scene. Now, when we press F, we want to drop a flag wherever the player is at. So let's go back into our player controller. We'll add a reference up here. We'll say public game object. We'll say checkpoint game object, what we'll call it. And we want to do that when we press the F key. So we'll say if input.get key down keycode.f, drop a flag. So when we press F, we want to drop a flag. So let's say instantiate, checkpoint game object, and transform parent, as you can see down there, we need to put this inside of our level group. So we can get a reference to our game manager. And then from our game manager, we can get a reference to the level group that actually holds all of the moving obstacles. And then just say transform, and that will set that as its parent. However, that doesn't get it in the same place as the player is in the world. So next what we do is we say game object G is equal to the instantiation. So we can get a reference to our flag and then make some modifications. So what we can say is g.transform.local position is going to be equal to this.transform.position minus game manager.level group.transform.position. So we're going to get the difference between our location and our game manager location, determine where we're going to place our flag in the scene. So now if we go and try this out, we should get flags that spawn wherever the player is. Press F right there, and they look like they were working correctly. And if I die, they spawn back here. Not really a checkpoint system yet, but this is how we get the flags where we want them to be. You can just mash them, put them everywhere, and they work exactly as we want them to. Now we need to get the player actually spawning back at the last checkpoint location. So to do that, when we press F, we drop our flag. And really our flag is just kind of a reference in the world. We don't actually need to add anything else to it. So when we press space, we do game manager reset all positions. We also run the same thing when we die. So this would be where we would want to set our checkpoint system. So let's go over to game manager. And we can say public, we'll say transform, or public vector 3, last checkpoint. And we'll make it equal to a new vector 3, and we 0, 0, 0. So it's instantiated at 0, 0, 0, and then when we reset all positions, we're just going to reset to the last checkpoint. And this should still work because vector 3 vector 3 0 is vector 3 with all 3 0. But to confirm, we can go in here and press space, and we can see that we're spawning back at the beginning, and same thing when we die. So now we need to add a new public void update checkpoint. And this will take in a vector 3 last, or new checkpoint, if I can type. And we'll just say last checkpoint is equal to new checkpoint. So when we stop and think about this, our level group is only moving along the x-axis. They're not moving along the y-axis. The player is what's moving along the y-axis. So if we try to set this to the last checkpoint and we just set our checkpoint to wherever the player is at that time, it's going to add a y value, which is going to move the level group in the wrong location. So what we can do here is, instead of just doing this, we can say this is equal to a new vector 3. And it's going to be last checkpoint dot x, comma, 0, 0 for the other two axes. Because we don't actually want to update on the x or the y axis. So now if we go back to the player controller and we actually call our method that we created, when we press the F key, we want to call our update. So say game manager dot update checkpoint. Well, it takes in a vector 3. We need to give it those values. So we can declare a new vector 3, or vector 3 checkpoint data equal to new vector 3. And for our x value, we want to get the game manager location. So we say, or the level group location. So game manager dot level group dot transform dot position dot x. And on our y-axis, we want to get our player location. So we can say this dot transform dot position dot y. And then on z, we don't do anything. So update checkpoint, we want to pass in our checkpoint data. And now if we try this out, we should get our location working on the x-axis, but not the y-axis, because we're not actually resetting the player's location. But if we jump here, let's set a checkpoint right there. And now if I die, I'm spawning right there where the checkpoint is. I updated a new one. That's my last checkpoint. And so on and so forth. But if I go, like, say, to the top of this and I set a checkpoint and then I die, I'm going to spawn at the last location the player was at rather than an actual position on the y-axis. So to add that, we just go back into here and we need to get a reference back to our player in here. So we can say public game object player. And when we reset our positions, we want to set our player.transform.position is going to be equal to our new vector 3. And we'll say 0 on the x-axis, or whatever the current value is on the x-axis, because the player's not actually moving. So player.transform.position.x. And then on the y-axis, we want to get last checkpoint dot y. And then z-axis, we're not going to do anything. So now if we go and try this out, this should fix our issue about moving up and down on the y-axis. So I can try it out by putting a right there. And that did not work because we did not put a reference in our game manager to our player. So let's drag our player square into here and try that again. So if I jump over this and put a flag mid-flight, you'll see that I am now coming down from up there. And if we go over to here, oh, I died. We can get over to the staircase where this would actually be useful. And I get to the top, or that's a bad place to put it. But now we can see that we will fall from wherever the flag is. Last thing I want to do is update the flag a little bit so its position is weird. So if we actually go and just say create empty parent, and let's call this flag, we can drag this down and override our flag here. So we can, let's unpack this. So go to prefab, unpack completely, and then drag this to the top, replace it. It's now going to drop that instead. And what we can do is, now that our flag is referenced to this, we can drag our flag up because it's like it looks like it's going into the ground a little bit. So if we try that and again, drag down here to update it, delete this out. We press F now, it should be above the ground rather than in when that was a little bit too high. We can fine tune this. If we go here, press F and pause, we can see our flag is a little high. So if we get our flag here, drag it down, we can then just drag it over to this. Replace, press play, and try again. So now when we press our button, our flag is on the ground if we're on the ground. Of course, it's still going to be in the air if we're way in the air, but now it is level with the bottom of the player, so it makes more sense to look at. That about covers it for this video. Our next video on this is going to be about putting the menus in and just a little bit more polish, but I think that will be the last video in the series, and we will have something that resembles very closely to the Impossible game. Thanks for watching.